All right, Mark. So we're good to go. And the new dates of the extension of the executive or the open meeting law suspension is on the screen as well.
Okay, very good. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience and welcome. My name is Mark Kiefer. I'm the chairman, and this is I'm calling to order the Beacon Hill Architectural Commission hearing of May 15th, 2025 at 5:05 p.m. So this is the May 2025 hearing of the Beacon Hill Architectural Commission. Today, the commission will be holding a public hearing to review applications in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, including the March 28th, 2025 amendment, extending the suspension of these provisions until June 3rd, 2027. We're conducting this meeting online, otherwise known as Zoom. To ensure public access to deliberations of the Beacon Hill Architectural Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing, aka Zoom. If you didn't hear the announcement a moment ago, the hearing is being recorded, and it is being recorded now. All further conversations between commissioners should therefore be audible to the public in attendance until the hearing is adjourned. And at this point, we'd like to acknowledge any media or elected officials currently present. I see Dan Murphy from the Beacon Hill Times. Welcome, Dan. Thanks for joining. Any other media or elected officials? Okay, certainly if there are any more that join, we will acknowledge them. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions, provide public comment on applications and discussions. In order to do that, we will first give you the heads up. We're going to have a public comment period within each application when we adjudicate it, as well as for the administrative approvals, if anyone wants to be heard on those. And we'll just give you a heads up when we're about to do that. If you do want to be heard on the record, you will need to raise your hand, quote unquote, using the button that is probably at the bottom of your Zoom panel, as illustrated on the screen right there. And Nick will unmute you and acknowledge you in turn. So again, we'll give you the heads up, but the public is invited to make public comments. I wanted to also acknowledge that I am joined by Commission Vice Chair Arian Allen, as well as Commissioners Jackson, Given, and Steele. Is that it, Nick? Okay. I'm going to try to remember everyone when we take votes. Okay, I think we are ready. The first item on the agenda is okay, we're not doing ratification of minutes at this point. Oh, we are. Up to you, Nick. You want to do that first? Okay. First item is ratification of the public hearing minutes, or is it? It is. Okay, sorry. Commissioners, any comments, questions, revisions, edits to the draft minutes for April 17th, 2025? Okay. Nick, I think I sent you something on that, and this.
You did.
And so that now the minutes incorporate those revisions.
Yeah, the most recent email I sent has the updated minutes.
Oh, yes, indeed. That's right.
Yep.
Sorry. Thank you. Okay. Do we hear a motion to move ratification of the public hearing minutes for the April 17th, 2025 public hearing?
So move.
Okay. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we will vote on the motion. Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Given.
Aye.
Commissioner Jackson.
Aye.
Commissioner Kiefer votes aye, and Commissioner Steele.
Aye.
Great, the minutes are approved. Thank you very much. And the next item, first on design review, is, let's see, as it comes up here, 120 Mount Vernon Street. I think I saw Beth Colt on there. Hi, Beth.
Hi.
Is it just welcome? Thanks for coming in. Is it just you today, Beth, or do you have anyone else?
Just me. I'm here solo.
Great. Okay. We have your application, of course, but do you want to just give us a quick summary of what you are proposing?
Yes. Hi, nice to meet you all. I'm Beth Colt. I'm the owner's rep for the Charles Street Meeting House. And I have a few slides. Is it possible to screen share? Is that appropriate? I have not been to one of your meetings before.
Sure. I think Nick can might need to let you do that.
Let me get that for you here. Let's see. Okay, Beth, you should be able to share. I'll stop my screen.
Okay.
Good to go. Yep.
So there we go. I think that's going to do it. So, let's see, go to this one. So just the overall picture here is that we're trying to add 4 security cameras, small security cameras to the exterior of the Charles Street Meeting House with the goal of increasing safety and security, not only for the general public who walk around the meeting house, but also for the tenants and occupants of the meeting house itself. In this picture, you will see the name of the product we plan to use. It is a Watchdog A1 5 megapixel. Its dimensions are approximately 3 by 3, and you can see a picture of it in the hand of a person, perhaps to give you a sense of its scale. The locations that we are requesting are on River Street. The idea would be 2 cameras back to back so that it would create a 180-degree view. I hope you can see my cursor along River Street here, protecting these windows and the general back alley. There would be a proposed other camera, which is at the garden door, which you cannot see through this tree, but I can show you a close-up of. And the 4th location would be at the front door, pointing out towards Mount Vernon Street, which should give a view of this section of the street. The first location that I discussed is, or actually the second, is here at the garden. This gives you a better sense of it. And there is in fact already a camera there that has existed there since prior to our owning the building. So that gives you a sense of its location. It's inset in the woodwork there. The second location, what was the first that I mentioned, would be on the River Street side, and the goal would be to have it up the wall here. Not this right here, which I've circled, is a sample that I taped onto the wall to give you a sense of its scale. I made a 2-scale model of the camera out of cardboard, and I stuck it up on that wall, but that was as high as I could reach. But it's meant to give you a sense of its scale. But the proposed location would be higher up the wall, probably where around where this lamppost is. And this would be 2 cameras back to back. And they could be painted to match the color of the brick, whatever you guys prefer. The last location is on the front door. I'm suggesting a spot right here in the little eave of the white trim. And I also put a sample here. This is as high as I could reach it. But you can see right there, there's my sample. That gives you a sense of the scale. And here it is from a farther away. That's meant to give you a sense of how big this camera will look when actually installed. So that is my report, and I'm happy to take questions. And really, we're just trying to improve the security of the general area. If disallowed, we will simply not proceed to put cameras in these locations, which I think would be too bad for safety and security, but that would be your call. So that's where we are. I'm going to stop share unless you think referring to the pictures would be relevant.
Just two quick, thank you, Beth, for that very helpful presentation. 2 quick follow-up questions, and forgive me if I missed it. The first one, the one that's on the garden door, just for the edification of the public, and that is to the left of the front entrance, right? So
Yes,
in this image, it's to the right. The front entrance is to the right.
It's right behind this tree here in this overview picture.
Okay,
There's
and
a
that
small garden as you face the front of the building to the left, and you would not be able to see it aerially from this tree, but when you get in close under this tree, this is what it looks like in that location.
Right. And that one stays?
That we're planning to keep that.
Right, okay. So there's one there already.
Yep.
Just to recap, it would be 2 on the River Street facade, which is around the corner to the left from this image, and then 2 at the front entrance, which is to the right of this image, above the steps, the main entry door.
I think we were only thinking 1 above the main entry door. So 2, let's go back to the overview. 2 right here, 1 at the garden door, 1 at the main entry door.
Okay.
A total of 4 cameras, 1 of which is already there. But
okay, so then
should you seek that?
All right, just to clarify, and again, forgive me if I missed it. The one on the front entry door goes.
I'll go back to here. So on the front entry door, the suggestion is in the woodwork where this little yellow dot is, which should capture, partially this front entry step.
Okay. And then is it possible just to zoom in on that just a little bit so we can see a little bit more of the detail around the wood there? I'm just wondering what's implicated there.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. It appears to be possible, slightly
Yeah.
challenging, but possible. There we
Oh,
go.
I see. So there's not a lot of architectural detail on that. It's kind of a flat, it's just the bottom corner of that
Yeah.
elliptical window.
Of a
Right.
mullioned window,
Yeah.
a mullioned window, yeah.
Okay.
Mark, real quick, Beth didn't say, but I actually met with the building team to discuss these locations to determine the best possible option. So they did consult with me. I just want to throw that out there.
Oh, very good. Okay. So
Yep.
this is it fair then to say, Nick, that this is without prejudice to the other particulars of the application, that this is your preferred or recommended locations?
Yeah, these are my recommended locations. There were
Great.
several options that we discussed, and these are the ones that I thought would be the best possible location. I think it's up for debate in terms of the color, and I'll leave that to you. Yeah, so that's where we are right now.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Very good. Commissioners, any further questions just about exactly what's proposed here? If not, I'm not seeing any. We will go to public comment. Again, if you want to be heard on the record, please raise your hand using the button that's probably on the bottom of your Zoom panel. And as soon as Nick sees that, he will unmute you.
Okay.
Someone will be heard.
Yep. All right. First up we have is Rochelle with the Civic Association. Rochelle, go ahead.
Yeah, Beacon Hill Civic Association. We oppose the proposed 2 camera installations on the center of the River Street brick facade, as they would be highly visible from a public way and thus do not satisfy guideline A9. We don't have a comment for the 2 doors because they weren't included in the application materials. And so that was not reviewed and does not have a comment. Thank you. End the comment.
Could I say anything, or I'm not allowed?
You can, but why don't we just see if anyone else? I
Okay.
think that might be
Sure.
it.
I think that's it. Yep.
Okay, going once, going twice. Anyone else want to be heard on this? Okay, hearing none, we'll close public comment. Okay, Beth, you wanted to say something?
I did review these exact slides in a meeting with the Beacon Hill Civic Association.
Okay, well, any further comment about the outcome
Well,
of that?
those
Just
were
to say
not-
that they're aware of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Okay.
be clear that I made an effort to, I was
Sure.
asked with them, I did meet with them, those slides were reviewed, so an unawareness about the cameras strikes me as odd. We talked about all 4 of them.
Okay, well, certainly we have the info now. Commissioner Jackson.
I'd like to be clearer about their locations on River Street. The front facade, you took us directly to the location, but the River Street facade, you simply said they were there. And because of Rochelle's comment, I'm wondering where on the pilasters do these occur? Do they occur on the center line, the pilasters, or how are they handled as sort of elements applied to a pretty rigorous architectural expression? Do you follow?
Should I answer or should I wait?
No,
Let's go back to the diagram if we could.
Or
This is specifically, Ralph, you're talking about the ones that are proposed
on
for the wall
on the River Street.
on the River Street, right?
Yeah.
okay, so
So-
here, so in overview, you can see, sorry, that isn't clear enough on that. On this one, there's an arrow pointing to this panel. There's a brick kind of a
Well-
column here.
If I look at the image to the right,
Yep,
and see your circle,
yep.
I see what I assume is the scale model.
Yes, that's my
and
scale model. Let me go in
To
a little.
to my mind, if the cameras are placed on the center line of the column of the pilaster, that works for me.
Yeah.
If each of them is placed in symmetrically on a column. as opposed to not a lot. I'm assuming they're going to be higher than shown in that sketch, than shown in that diagram.
Correct. That was as high as I could reach with my scale
Yeah,
model. But I
so-
think the goal was center on this column, which is very close to the lamppost and up about the height of the lamppost.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful choice.
Okay, and Ralph, just to be clear for everyone else, when we say column or pilaster, we're talking about, it's a little hard to see right now, but where the cursor is, the portion of brick that protrudes rather than is recessed, let's just say between the windows.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, yeah, very good. So you're saying if one goes kind of where the cursor is right now, and then the other at the same height to the left on the pilaster to the left.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
I think the
Either-
idea is that they would be back to back as close as possible, so they
Oh,
point
so
in either direction.
if you could do the two of them at the light post in that panel.
Oh, both at the same place.
They're both in the same place, as close to each other as possible.
Okay,
So-
would that work, Beth, for your needs?
Yes, I believe that was the designer's goal.
Okay, so if I'm intuiting Commissioner Jackson's what he's going for here, I think if we could have them literally right next to each other, so they're centered as
Yeah.
one block, that would be good. Ralph, any thoughts while you have the floor about the color? Should we try to paint them a brick color? Should we try to paint them to match the windows? Should we just leave them white and not try too hard?
I'd have them match the lamp post.
Oh, make them black,
Yeah,
so they kind of go away. Yeah.
yeah. Or they become a part of that sort of technological expression.
Right. Okay. Any other thoughts about either the location or the color? And Beth, do these things come, can you get it in black?
Yes, I believe you can. Yes,
Okay.
you can also, they will take paint, so they can be painted at any specific color.
Okay.
I think that
Yeah.
Ralph's idea of having it black makes sense. Especially if they're gonna be so close together.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah. I think
the
we
white
might
just
be-
sticks out a lot.
Yeah, right. And I think we're kind of kidding ourselves if we think we could match the
brick.
brick.
Yeah,
It'd probably draw more attention to itself rather than
Definitely.
disguise itself. Okay, and then not to jump ahead too quickly here, but if we have what sounds like at least a bit of a consensus on that, the ones on the front though, the one on the front, sorry, that would be tucked up in the corner of the window, since that one is going to be against, the off-white paint. That one I think would be a better candidate for either trying to match the paint or just making it white.
I thought there were gonna be two in the front as well. What was this? So just three.
Just
So it's a total of just 3 cameras.
It's a total of 4 cameras.
Where's the 4th?
On the second door, which also faces the front, it's in the garden.
Okay.
Oh, yes, right. So
All
that,
right.
that, okay.
So if they're gonna match the paint, then it makes sense for them to be off-white.
Yeah. Beth, are you able to do that? Just paint it whatever color the trim
Yes,
is?
yes, I'm sure we
Okay.
can match the trim. Yep.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Any further thoughts on color, location, or even just the number of these things? We have approved security cameras. We understand, of course, there's both a growing perceived need for this. This is quite a public building, of course. It's office space for a lot of folks. There's public businesses on the first floor. There's a patio and so forth. And it's, in this corner that's quite dark on the River Street side and has much less activity. So I think, at least to my mind, it's not an unreasonable request. We've had a few of these just last month, a couple on last month or 2 months ago on the Hill House, a similar public building. Of course, a Hill House, I'm at 74 Joy Street, which is the headquarters of Hill House and the Civic Association. So I guess I think given the attempt to make these things as innocuous as possible, and the fact that it reflects Nick's recommendations, having already thought through what makes the most sense, I'm okay with it. I do like the suggestion, though, of the River Street ones being black, the others to match the trim. So that's, I think, maybe where we're headed, but I don't want to presume if Commissioner Given or Steele have a contrary view or anything to add. Okay, in that case, I will move that the application be approved
Oh.
as submitted with, sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Sorry, Mark, can we just make just the gentle request to remove the other camera on the Tate Bakery door frame, which is not approved. And when I was speaking with the team, they did agree to have that one removed. It also seems like if Tate wants to apply for a camera of this size, it's possible that that might be approved, but we'll have to address that when we get to it. So maybe that slight little comment there.
Okay, Beth, you okay with that?
I'm fine with that. Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I will move that the application be approved as submitted with the following provisos. That the two cameras to be placed on the River Street facade be located together in the middle of the what we're calling the column or pilaster, adjacent to the gas street lamp, that they be located as indicated in the discussion at approximately the height of the gas street lamp, and that they be painted black. That the cameras to be mounted on the front facade, the one in the garden and the one above the main entrance, be painted in a color to match the existing trim color, and that the existing or extant non-functioning camera on the entrance door to Tate be removed.
I second.
Okay, great. We will vote. Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Given,
Aye.
Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
Commissioner Kiefer votes aye, Commissioner Steele.
Aye.
Okay, the application is approved. Thank you very much, Beth. You will get a letter from Nick summarizing our determination. If you have any questions or need to follow up, just follow up with Nick directly. Thanks for coming
I
in.
appreciate your time.
Thanks. Okay, next on the agenda is 116 Myrtle Street. Is there someone from 116 Myrtle present? 116 Myrtle. That is
I think it's Sean. I think I saw
Sean. Yes, I
Sean.
think I saw
Yeah,
Sean.
there he is right there.
Hello.
Hi, Sean.
Hello,
Hi, Sean.
how are you?
Welcome. Good.
My
How are
name
you?
is Sean. I'm the owner of Historic Window and Door. This application is for 116 Myrtle Street. A few months ago, I already got the windows restored and we're adding storm windows. The architects on the project asked me to put in an application for cameras. So I submitted to Nick an original application for a couple of locations for 2 cameras that they wanted. I reviewed it with Nick, and after discussion with Nick, the application is going to be for 1 range camera, but it will be on the 4th floor at the protruding non-original windows that are casements on the exterior. And those protrude from the ground. Nick, I think there's a photo of that shows that I submitted in the photos. That's the camera there, and it would be black in color, and it's 3.7 inches by 3.228 inches diameter. That would be the doorbird right there. Nick suggested a doorbird and that pilaster. That would be the location. It would start at like 36 inches and end about 44. Brass, solid brass, instead of the other locations that were originally proposed by the architect. That is a hollow pilaster inside, so the intention was to put the plate flush with the wood or barely like an 1/8 inch on top of that wood. But there's only 4 7/8 inches that's there. So I researched, and the smallest doorbird was 3.56 inches. So I'll have like a 1/2 inch on each side, which is kind of relative to that black square right there, of where the doorbird would be. And then Nick suggested that if they wanted a range camera, he wanted it way far away, out of the way. So right there, if you look at that 4th floor that protrudes, a 3.2 by 3.7 inch black in color camera, similar to the one in the previous application, would be put up there to the left. And that would give all the requirements that the owner wanted for security.
Okay, Sean, so just to summarize quickly here, am I understanding that just as we're here right now, the revised proposal is, or you are willing to revise the proposal per Nick's recommendations to simply a doorbird next to the door and a
Correct.
camera mounted at the bottom of that overhang that we're looking at right now.
Correct.
Okay, and again, so again, for our edification, the doorbird is one of these modern entry systems that has an incorporated camera, and it would be, the whole unit would be about the size of that plate that we saw there.
That's
Yeah,
it
looks
there.
like that. Very good. Okay, so it's got a camera, it's got buttons. This is a pretty standard thing we've approved, and in this case, it sounds like you can make it, if not exactly flush, pretty close to flush because you've got some space.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the camera that goes on the overhang, that's painted black.
It's just black. It comes black in color.
Yeah, the metal is black,
Right.
right?
There's two
Okay.
different. Yeah, that's it right there. So the whole thing is actually black. The lens, the back,
yeah,
of
right.
the housing.
And it's about 3 by 4 inches, something like that.
3.228 by 3.701 inches.
Okay.
Diameter.
And can we just go back to that photo again just for a second? So that's like that's way up there, right? It's the underneath the 4th story of the building, right?
Correct.
And
Yes.
actually going downhill, it's more like 4.5 on the bottom side of it. Right. Okay. So that's quite far away. Yeah. So that's going to be pretty small when perceived, if you even happen to look up and see it, which you probably won't.
That was Nick's recommendations.
Yeah. Now Nick and I talked about this earlier as well. I think that's quite and your client is fine with that?
Yes, it was discussed multiple times, and I told them that I was going to talk to Nick, and then
Right.
when Nick came back, the client came in and said, whatever they would suggest, we will go with. So.
Okay, very good. Well, we appreciate that. Nick and Sean, both of you working that out ahead of time. Commissioners, any questions again about what we are now, what we now have proposed?
No.
Okay, hearing none, why don't we go ahead and take public comment. Again, if you want to be heard on the record, please raise your hand in the Zoom. Nick will call on you and unmute you.
Okay, first up we have is Rochelle. Where'd you go, Rochelle? There you are. Go ahead.
Okay. Beacon Hill Civic Association, we do not oppose this application as submitted. The new intercom satisfies guideline E7 as it is a brass base panel contained within the entryway of the building and flush mounted in the wood trim, and the camera placement under the 4th floor addition will be functionally invisible and satisfy guideline A9.
Thank you, Rochelle. All right, Mark, I'm not seeing any other public comment for this application, so we can close it.
Okay, commissioners, any other concerns about the style, location, colors, placement? Okay, I think that's it's quite reasonable what's proposed. Again, this is again, just to recap, this doorbird system is one of the what we might now call a de facto standard for these modern style intercom systems that Nick has quite usefully worked out and promoted from time to time. And so I think this is quite consistent with our prior record of decision on these things. Anyone else? Okay, I will move that the application be approved as submitted with the following provisos, just because I just want to make sure, Sean, that we get it on the record that we're talking about this revised version of it. That the 2 and only 2 additional installations are approved. 1, the doorbird system to be mounted to the right of the door in the wood, flush mounted or as flush as possible, and the other being the black or a camera colored black mounted on the overhang of the 4th story of the building, and that, just to be even more precise, just in case, that the originally proposed separate camera at the entrance is deleted. That's removed from the application. And by the way, forgive me, you were proposing that the doorbird be a brass cover?
Correct.
Plate?
So,
Yes.
PVD, solid brass, lifetime brass.
Okay, and in brass as specified in the application. Okay, do I hear a second?
Second,
Okay, we will vote. Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Aye.
Commissioner Jackson,
aye.
Commissioner Kiefer votes aye, Commissioner Steele.
Aye.
Okay, the application is approved. Thank you, Sean. You'll get a letter from Nick summarizing our determination. Any questions, of course, as always, follow up with Nick directly. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
You too, thanks. Okay, next is 94 Mount Vernon. I think I saw, was it Mark? Yes, there's Mark. Hi, Mark. Anyone
Greetings.
else from your team? Is it just you, Mark?
No, we have John Moran, who's with Alpine Advisory, and Gaetano Morello, who is the owner, client, developer of this project.
Okay.
I'm assuming John is John's iPad.
That is usually how he rolls. Yes.
Okay.
Are you leading the show here, Mark?
Yes, I will lead the show, and then pass
Okay.
it to John.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead? You want to just give us, this is continued from a prior hearing, but maybe just give us a quick summary of how we got here and the updated proposal.
Sure thing. So I think this is our third time on this topic. Proposed roof deck at 94 Mount Vernon Street, opposite Lewisburg Square. We have done through many iterations, both behind the scenes and in front of you. The current proposal is pulling the front rail back considerably, roughly to the middle of the property. So this is the location, and then the next page shows the plan diagram of the roof. So in red, you can see that the rail we pulled back from the face of the building a total of 21 foot 6 inches, and that's 9 feet pulled back from the last time we were in front of you. Hand in hand with the roof deck rail is a removal of an existing hatch, which you can see in the existing plan at the top. There's like a skylight hatch that's kind of pretty visible in the photos I'll show you in a second. Also, we're proposing a hatch in the deck. And the next page gets into some details. So what we've done, and I think last time we were in front of you, we had this tactic as well, is that we're insetting the deck into the roof, so it's sunken in. The railings are at code minimum 36-inch high from the deck surface, and that little triangle shape you see in there, that's the proposed hatch at 30 inches above the deck surface. And again, the front rail is pulled back 21 foot 6 inches. There's a slight notch in the plan of the rail so that it's not visible from down Mount Vernon towards Charles Street. So it's and it is not visible from, it's visible from Acorn, but not from Willow or West Cedar. And Acorn's the private right of way. So it's really the topic is the visibility of the rail at the front of the building.
Okay, and that
Next slide.
visibility is primarily, well, no, I think exclusively from the opposite end of Lewisburg Square on Pinckney Street, correct?
Correct. So I think the next photo. So this the photo on the right is the mock-up in its current state. This has been up for a couple of weeks, so that's what, if Mark and Nick, I think you walked it, that's what you would see.
Yes.
And on the left is one of our original versions, just showing you that we've through engineering and design made it and pulled the rail back. It's a lot lower. And the little bump you see sort of over the dormer, that's the existing hatch / skylight that we're proposing to remove as well. That thing there, yeah. So this is the view from Pinckney across the square, and the next page is, I think, just zoomed in of the same view.
So that's before and after the most recent change of pulling it back. The left was earlier, and now the right is pulling it back.
Correct. And then the next slide shows just, a number of, we always have to show, makes the argument that there is precedent for roof rails, though, we can't say that just because somebody else did it, we get to do it. And then the next image, I think, is helpful to show the sort of the grand view of the square and how little the rail really is part of that view. But I think I'll hand it to John and let him sort of elucidate in better language than than me on some of these topics.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, please, go
Yes.
ahead.
Yes. At the last hearing, I made reference to the board's approval of the Union Club on Park Street. That was approved October 17th of last year. It went through a similar review administrative process. It was initially denied without prejudice to reduce the visibility of the proposed deck. The deck then was pulled back 2 feet 8 inches in size, and the deck itself was reduced. The chair at that meeting made a motion to approve, noting that the proposed deck and railing was now minimally visible from one path on the common and obscured by buildings and mechanical features, among other mitigating factors. The chair then went on to note that the commission had recently approved 2 other minimally visible roof decks at 54 Pinckney and 7 Charles Street. The 54 Pinckney Street is very similar to what we are reviewing today. It was approved on August 15th of last year. Again, initially at an advisory hearing, it was denied without prejudice, with the commission suggesting that the visibility be reduced, particularly from Mount Vernon Street. The deck was reduced. 55 square feet was removed from the abutting property to reduce the visibility from Mount Vernon Street. And the chair at that meeting affirmed that the guidelines are essential tools both for the applicants and the commissioners. But the chair then went on to comment at that hearing that the commission must also interpret the guidelines, considering both the specific circumstances of each application, as well as the commission's prior record of decisions of similar cases. I would suggest that the viewscape is simply reversed. The Pinckney Street concern was the view from Mount Vernon Street. In today's hearing, the concern is the view from Mount Vernon to Pinckney Street. Additionally, as mentioned at the prior meeting, the adjoining property at 92 Mount Vernon Street has a rather massive window addition to the roof, plus the demising wall between the 2 buildings is massive, and the chimney is massive. And we would respectfully suggest that these are mitigating factors to reduce the overall streetscape view looking from Pinckney Street. And we would suggest that the board the commission consider these factors and the consistency based upon its prior approval of both Pinckney and the Union Club. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. Let's see, commissioners, any other clarifying questions at the moment before we deliberate this? I just want to get the public comment, but I want to make sure we're on the same page as to what is currently proposed. Actually, you know what, Mark, I think you spoke to it a moment ago, but I wanted to just clarify for all of our mutual benefit here. This particular deck, as it was originally proposed, again, it extended much further closer to Mount Vernon Street. And there was a section, as we're seeing now, that's visible from the stretch of Pinckney Street at Lewisburg Square, across the square. But then there was another section that was implicated on the side, which is, say, the west side of the building, that would potentially be visible from lower down on Mount Vernon Street. And can you just remind us what the implication of this latest revision to the design is for that section of the other section that at least originally would have been, I think, visible from lower down on Mount Vernon?
Sure thing, Nick. If you can go to the site plan, it's the page numbered 2. Or sorry, page 2. So you can barely see what we had done when the rail was further. Yeah, thank you. You're circling. There's a little notch in the rail. So the rail along the party line, the party wall between 94 and 96, that railing as it moves further to the right was very visible from down Mount Vernon Street towards Charles. We had pulled a section of that railing closer into the building, that 2'6" dimension. It was much more obvious that that was a move we made before we pulled the front rail back. So now there's just a small little notch just to keep that corner from not being visible from down Mount Vernon.
Okay, so to summarize, the result of this revision and the work you've done to revise this plan is the apparent height when viewed from Pinckney Street across the square is lower. And the side of it that you used to be able to see from down on Mount Vernon, you don't really see anymore. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that in mind, so a part of the visibility has gone away altogether. The other part of it, it's still visible, but the apparent height is lower, and it's only visible from the stretch of Pinckney. Okay, any other clarifying questions before we take public comment on this? Okay, let's go ahead and take public comment. Get everybody heard on the record. Raise your hand in your Zoom panel, and Nick will call on you and unmute you.
Okay, first up we have is Rochelle. Rochelle, go ahead.
Beacon Hill Civic Association, we oppose the upper roof deck as it is visible from a public way and does not satisfy guideline C3, but very much appreciate the significant efforts of the applicant to minimize the visual impact. End of comment.
Okay, thanks, Rochelle. Anyone else?
Not seeing anyone else, Mark, so we can close public comment for this application.
Okay, and sorry, one last question since it's up on the screen now. So when we look at it from Pinckney right now, there's a box that we see in the left. That's the hatch that's there now. That's going away. And then you're replacing it with this lower profile hatch. And forgive me, you probably said it several times now, Mark, but do you see that? Would you see that new hatch at all?
No, it comes out of the deck, which is recessed beneath into the roof. So that proposed hatch would not be visible.
Okay, so that's a good segue then, because I was going to ask, one of the means by which, of course, it doesn't happen often, but occasionally there is the ability to lower the apparent height of a roof deck railing and still be within the code by ostensibly recessing it into the roof. So I know you mentioned that in passing, but I'm going to admit I forget what, if any, extent that was part of the original plan. So obviously all we really care about is how much of that rail we're going to see, but in addition to pulling the railing back from the front, the Mount Vernon Street side, have you also in this iteration recessed the deck or further recessed the deck, or was that an original feature of your design?
That was there's roughly 3 points in time. The original design was a roof deck hovering on top of the roof, very large, very proud, very forward. The second iteration, we sunk it in and pulled it in a little bit. The third iteration, roughly today, is that it's sunk in the deck. So that was already the idea we had presented to you before, and pulling the rail back, and as well as tightening up that rail height. Most commercial railings need to be 42 inches high. For single family residential, you could do 36, which is what we're doing here. So I'd say from the first time we just talked about it to now, the railing has moved away from the street probably 16 feet and dropped roughly 2 feet. So it's apparently lowered and also literally lowered in
2 feet. Okay,
pure
yeah,
geometry.
that was my next question. Okay, so 2 feet. Yeah, that's significant. Okay, but sorry, but part of that is going from 42 to 36, or is that all the recessing?
6 of it is from going from 42 to 36, and the other 18 inches is recessing.
Okay, so you recessed at 18 inches. Okay, that's good to know. I did not. It's probably right on there, but I didn't see it. Thank you. Okay, so I think it is fair to say the applicant has made significant efforts to try to mitigate the visual impact of this, as Rochelle said a moment ago. And just to respond to, or just pick up on John's nice exposition of the prior hearing. So as with all of these things, yes, I think we have to, it's common for us to adjudicate roof decks. I think notwithstanding the letter of the guidelines, our guiding principle has always been trying to mitigate the visibility of these things and maybe even more importantly, the visual impact. We certainly consider both mitigating and aggravating factors. And I think we as again, a principle, aim to make a consistent and reasonable record of decision where even if the circumstances are different, and even if the result is different, that the reasoning by which we arrived at the result, our determination, is consistent from application to application. Again, each circumstance is unique, so we have to adjudicate them one at a time, but hopefully we do it in the same way using the same guiding principles. I did come out and look at this. I likewise appreciate the efforts you've made to reduce the visual impact of this. I appreciate also that the roof is relatively flat in the back, and so there's a practical limit to how apparently high you're going to be able to make, or how much apparent height you're going to be able to eliminate from that vantage point on Pinckney Street. You know, I think in this case, like probably everything else, there are mitigating and aggravating factors. One of the aggravating factors I think that we do consider, and that would distinguish this perhaps from some of the ones that John mentioned, but not from others, is, you know, when a roof deck railing is going to be placed in front of other architectural features, in particular unremarkable architectural features that are not, important historic character defining features and so forth, and maybe in particular when they are simply functional elements and so forth that are part of an already cluttered sort of more industrial character of roofscape, that tends to mitigate our concerns, versus a circumstance where the railing would be set against the open sky and therefore more visible and arguably having greater visual impact. I think this one clearly is set against the open sky, and so that's, I think, an aggravating factor here. However, I think with respect to mitigating factors and, you know, just being consistent with our prior determinations, if we can go back one slide, I think it's one slide, I'm sorry, that there were some photographs of other buildings in the vicinity. I've gone out and looked around, and just a casual inspection of some of the nearby roofscapes, even from the same location. So that it's not labeled here, but the one on the left is Pinckney Street, to sort of just turning around from where you would view this mock-up from. And that photo, to be fair, is probably on the private way a little bit of Lewisburg Square, but in any case, you can see that railing very clearly from up Pinckney Street. If you look across Lewisburg Square, it's not quite as evident in the second photo from the left, but that's 17 and 15 Lewisburg Square, which have a railing across both of the top of them, which, like the one on the left, is set against the open sky. If you look across the square, it's not shown here, but 16 on the lower part of the square has a similar, it's not as large, but another piece of railing that's against the open sky. If you go up to, let's see, the one on the right there, I'm not sure what address that is. I think that's 5 Lewisburg Square or something. But there are a number of these that are visible from one vantage point or another, that, at least in my estimation, are at least as prominent from at least as long a stretch of either the same street or an adjacent street. And then there are more. If you go over to Mount Vernon Street and look down Willow, you see 40 Chestnut Street, which is again against the open sky from a comparable or shorter distance. Above that is 88 Mount Vernon, which, if you back up on Mount Vernon, you see, if you go up Mount Vernon Street, there's a couple buildings on the left. If you get to the top of Mount Vernon, you look down Walnut, you see 11 Walnut. All of these decks are, they have single portions of the rail, one part of the square or more, or a corner like in the left here, that's visible from some remove, like this one, and set against the open sky. So I think as far as the consistency test goes, there's another one. There's 2 of them actually. It was mentioned 50 54 Pinckney. There's 58 Pinckney. Again, similar circumstance. You see it from Mount Vernon Street. You see one plane of the railing against the open sky at the top of the building. So there are a number of these, just candidly, in the general vicinity of this, that I think it would be fair to say are similar in character to this. It's not the whole thing that's visible. It's just one side of it, or sometimes two sides of it. It's not visible like from right on the street, but it is visible from, you know, half a block away, some remove. It is about as long a length of railing in most of these cases or more. And it's at least as much set against the open sky as this. In other words, how much of it do we see above the ridge line of the roof or the parapet or whatever it may be? So I think I dare say, well, we don't want these things to, proliferate infinitely, and we want to mitigate their visual impact. I think, to my estimation, the visual impact has been mitigated, not entirely, obviously, but significantly, particularly when we consider that, again, it was two sides of this that were visible, and now it's just one. I would conclude by just saying, if you go down 2 doors from this to 90, it's either 90, maybe it's 3 doors to 98, there's a deck, again, the side of which is visible against the open sky from just beyond on Mount Vernon. So that deck can't be seen from this view, but it can be seen from Mount Vernon Street. This deck can be seen from this view, but it can't be seen from the Mount Vernon side. So we kind of have both circumstances in evidence around here, where you can see the side, you can't see this one. You can see the front like you can see this one. I'm sorry, that was a long rambling exposition there, but I wanted my colleagues to have the benefit of just the casual walk around that I did when I went out and looked at this. With that long introduction, colleagues, your thoughts? That's not stunned silence, I hope. And I guess I would just draw your attention. Go ahead, Ralph, please.
I think the presenters have made an extraordinary effort to be responsive to the commission. So I don't feel, as you showed other examples, the notion of this decking en route is a moving target. And what would be considered reasonable at one moment in time, in another moment in time, it may be more restrictive, or it may have gotten more restrictive. But I think the owners have done a wonderful job of being responsive.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. Any further thoughts? The one other thing I'll just mention, in case it matters to anyone, that so again, this is the thought process we used at 54 Pinckney. I think I've got that address right. To John's point earlier in the discussion, we looked at, there was a couple of roof decks that were visible from that same spot, and we kind of concluded, well, those roof decks are at least as visible as the one that's proposed. But we nevertheless, as we did in this case, both in the initial meetings that Nick had, and then in subsequent hearings with the commission, we had asked the applicant to try to nevertheless work to try to reduce the visibility further, and they did, I think, in, again, 2 iterations, just as they have here. What they came up with was, it's still going to be visible, but it's going to be less visible. It's only going to be visible from a short stretch of one street on one side. I think that's kind of, at least the reasoning, again, I think is consistent. By the way, we also, part of our reasoning on 54 Pinckney was from that same spot, there were 2 roof decks that were visible, again, just on one side of them, and about as visible or more. One of them was visible against the open sky like this would be. The other was not. It was visible just against the side of the building, but the one that was visible against the open sky, the apparent height of it was greater than what we see here because it didn't benefit from being pulled back or being recessed into the roof. And so I think, you know, a positive determination here would be consistent with that logic, if not, you know, the specific circumstances of that prior application.
Okay. I just want to hear from Sal. What are your thoughts? Nick?
From who,
Hi,
Arian? I'm sorry.
yeah, for
From
me,
staff?
I think
From
you
Nick,
said
sorry.
staff, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I do applaud the applicant's ability to reduce the visibility. I do think that there could be a slight less visibility here, but other than that, I would support the project. So if I had to request it, I would say if we could reduce it, as my staff comments indicate, reduce the visibility by about maybe 12 inches or so. But I don't know if that's possible. So those are my comments.
Well, Mark, let's actually just test that. Again, hypothetically for the moment, I know you said the reduction in apparent height is two things. It's you get about sorry, it's three things. You get about you get some from pulling it back, which I think I understood you say 16 feet from the originally proposed location. You get some from taking 6 inches off the rail, other things being equal, by because it's a single family you're building, you can do that under code. It can be 36 rather than 42. And then finally, you get an additional reduction in apparent height by recessing the entire deck 18 inches into the roof, correct?
Correct. That's how we arrived to it. I can say that so if there's three factors, because of we can't sink the deck any further, and we've
That
gone
was
to
my
like a
question,
pedestal
yeah.
into the deck. We can't do that. I think we can pull the rail back a little bit. I'll look at. I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but the geometry of the stair to get to the hatch, at some point that rail is going to intersect with the hatch itself. But we can look at pulling the back as much as we can. I don't think it will be substantive. And what we've learned in these revisions is that as the rail moving the rail back and forth has less impact than dropping
for
it.
sure.
And we've dropped it kind of as much as we can structurally into the roof.
Okay, that was where I was going with that. Was there any more room, literally and figuratively, to recess it further? I agree, just based on what you presented before and having looked at the different mock-ups, it strikes me that unfortunately, because the roof is flat and you're viewing it from this distance, that you really pulling it back doesn't buy you that much. I don't know that it's gonna get you 6 inches lower in apparent height. But you're going to run into the hatch eventually anyway, right?
Could I make a comment, Mark?
Yeah, please.
When you went through your images, you described them in terms of their transparency. And I looked at them and thought of it in terms of awareness of their presence some are more obviously present. And what they've chosen to do is to reduce the sense of their presence. So if I look at this image to the far left, you're very much aware. If I look at the image they're presenting, I'm not as aware of it as a place on the roof.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And so I think awareness is more significant, more significantly intrusive in these examples than in the one they're presenting.
Right. I think it's the distinction. I would just use different words, but visual impact instead of visibility. And particularly because the railing in the present case is going to be in between these two, I guess it's the walls or whatever. You don't see a corner, to Commissioner Jackson's point. What you're going to see is a black line above a black line above another black line, right? And so because we have the benefit in this case of having a black, or let's just call it charcoal gray mansard with a black or charcoal gray frieze, if for lack of a better word, probably the wrong word, at the top of it. And so what we'll see above that is another parallel black line with the, punctuated by these spindles and so forth. So I think I agree. you'll see it, but the visual impact, I think, is further mitigated just by the particular conditions of this roof line. The other point I was going to make earlier was it's also not a particularly historic or important, I think, architecturally significant. No disrespect to the the prior architects, but it's a later addition, this mansard, and it's, as far as these things go, relatively unremarkable in terms of its architecture and so forth.
All right.
Okay, any other thoughts, comments, questions, concerns? Okay. Going once, going twice. Okay, in light of that, I would move that in light of, and let's get this all on the record here, in light of the significant effort that the applicant has made to reduce the visibility and visual impact of the deck, including recessing it into the roof, pulling the rail back to a significant degree, and reducing the height of the railing, all of the things being equal, and the fact that the visibility from below on Mount Vernon Street of the side of the railing has been eliminated, and that finally the apparent height of the railing is reduced from the one and only remaining location from which it will be visible, which is only a short section of Pinckney Street at some remove all the way across Lewisburg Square, that the application be approved as it is submitted in its currently revised form.
I second.
Okay, we will vote. Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Given,
Aye.
Commissioner Jackson,
All right.
Commissioner Kiefer votes aye, Commissioner Steele. Sandy, you're muted. Commissioner Steele. Oh, Sandy is still muted.
Aye.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Steele. Okay, the application is approved. Thank you all, team, for coming in. You'll get a letter from Nick summarizing our determination. Any questions, please follow up with him directly. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, and thank you all, Commissioners. And Nick, thank you for all the guidance along the way.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next is 141 Revere, which I think is Barbara Lewis. Is Barbara here, or a representative of Barbara? I don't see Barbara. 141 Revere, is there a representative for 141 Revere present?
You can raise your hand.
Raise your hand in your Zoom if you are here for 141 Revere.
Spoke to her the other day.
Okay.
All right.
Just see who else is here. I don't think there's anyone who could be.
No,
Okay, should we move on?
Yeah, and I can see if I can give her a buzz while we're
Okay.
talking. Yeah,
Sure.
it's the next application. Yep.
Okay, so let's skip for the moment to 126 Charles Street. Is there a representative from 126 Charles Street? Ocean, I think I saw Ocean earlier.
There she is.
Yes, there you are.
Hi.
Welcome, thanks for coming in. Do you want to just give us a quick summary of what you are proposing?
So I just opened a women's clothing store on Charles Street. I am considered a pop-up. I'm here through August, but I wanted to help my visibility a little bit. I was just going to use the current hardware that's already attached to the building. As I'm sure most of you know that Millie was here before, so
Right.
that black bar there and the two hooks coming down, I'm gonna use like black, actually weatherproofed hooks that will not cause any of that rust runoff that we're seeing there. Even though my sign is white, it is going to be hopefully not too obtrusive. It's just going to be a circle white wooden sign, white, painted white, and then carved in black will say Eleve, which is my company's name. And underneath it, it will say apparel, decor, and apothecary, just to give the public an idea of what we're selling. And that's about it.
Okay, so it's wood. You said the letters are carved. Are they just painted?
They are carved and they'll be painted black.
Okay, and by carved, sorry, we mean in size, they're carved into the wood?
Yes.
Okay, so it's white, it's got a black banner on the outside, and then it's in size letters painted black. Okay, existing bracket and the chains, existing chains, you're gonna replace those? You
The
just told
existing
us.
thing. Just make sure
Okay.
that the hooks are weatherproof so that we don't see any of that runoff on my sign.
Oh, very good. I see what you mean. Very good. Okay, that and the sign is wood. That all seems to be in order. The size is appropriate. Just for our mutual benefit here, this is one of the few buildings on Charles Street that has multiple businesses on the ground floor. So we have historically allowed an exception to our sign guidelines, or the one blade sign per building. Pardon me. You can't see it, but there's another 2 spaces to the left of this that also have projecting signs, and we have consistently approved those in this location. The others being the Charles Street Meeting House and the Lincolnshire, further down Charles Street. Commissioners, any questions about what's proposed? Okay, we'll take public comment. If you want to be heard, please raise your hand and in the Zoom.
Okay, first up we have is Rochelle. Let's see, Rochelle, go ahead.
Beacon Hill Civic Association. We do not oppose this application as proposed. The new store sign satisfies guideline I6 as a traditional hand-carved wooden sign of appropriate size using an existing bracket. The application does not violate guideline I9's building signage limitation, as the other signs on this building were approved to be added while the former sign existed. End of comment.
Okay, thank you, Rochelle.
Anyone
All right,
else?
not seeing anyone else, Mark, so we can close public comment for this application.
Okay, public comment is closed. Commissioners, any concerns, comments? Motions?
I motion to approve.
Okay. As submitted?
As submitted. And someone else said something. Was that?
Second,
I seconded.
Oh, okay.
Okay, very good. It's been moved and seconded to approve the application as submitted. We will vote. Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Given,
Aye.
Commissioner Jackson,
aye.
Commissioner Kiefer votes aye, Commissioner Steele.
Aye.
Okay, the application is approved. Thank you, Ocean, for coming in. You'll get a letter from Nick just summarizing our determination. If you have any questions, just follow up with Nick directly. Assume you have his contact. So thank you.
Thank you.
And good luck with the business.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay, moving right along. Just to check, did we get any
Barbara's on her.
141?
Sorry, she's on her way on right now. So perhaps we can just we'll finish up the other applications. We'll have her towards the end.
Great. Okay, so next is 56 Pinckney, I believe. I think I saw that Bridget. Yes. Hello, Bridget. Welcome.
Where is she? Bridget. Where is she? Did she raise her hand? Ah, there she is.
Thanks.
There you go.
Hello, I'm Bridget Williams, the architect for Jim Bordewick and Martha McNamara. And we are doing a repair on the back of their house. And it's a structure that was designed and built by Alex McAvoy McIntyre, the author of the walking tour of Beacon Hill. And I think in the 70s maybe. And it has an arched plastic structure on the back that you can see just at the back. And let me just fill in about why. The other thing about this site that's unusual is that although it is technically visible from a public way, you would have to go down an alley off of Pinckney Street and turn right, go down another alley and look over the fence. So this is not a view from any street or commonly accessed pathway. You would have to know what you were doing to see it exactly. So it's there's a little alley that goes next to Sally Brewster's house, and right there, and then you turn right and continue down past those 3 houses to the actually 4, to the spot where you can see it. Thank you for that. Fabulous.
Yeah, Nick, if you bring up 48 Pinckney, we can see the street view of this alley, which is
yeah, and does
yeah.
not look like a public
Right.
alley at all.
And so just to orient us further, Bridget, so you go down this little cobbled alley, which dead ends at the back lot of these houses. And then if you know to turn to the right, you will notice another even narrower alley. Yeah, you can't even see it from there, but it's kind of behind that house. And then you go down to the end of that, which also dead ends. And then you turn right again and tuck yourself into this little nook and look up between the fence and the wall, and you see this thing that we're talking about, this greenhouse, right?
Exactly.
So this is all, for some weird reason, it is a public way, but this has come up before in a few other applications, and you really need to work hard to find this spot.
You do. And what you would find is this, as I say, arched, it's framed in wood. The arched portion of the apparent glass is plastic. It was poorly built, but backing up a hair, the reason that it was built arched and transparent is that just tucked in to the left side of that arch is a window in 58 Pinckney Street. So there's a tiny window in the side of 58 Pinckney Street, and that window was not to be blocked. And that's why McIntyre built the arched shape so that it wouldn't be blocked. What the current owners want to do is, I'm sorry, it's been leaking, and they have spent years trying to fix it. And because it was so poorly built, it's been impossible to fix. What they would like to do is replace the arched portion with a gently sloped roof at the level of the bottom of the arch, and in that gently sloped roof put a small skylight, so it will be below the sill of the window in 58 Pinckney Street, so it won't block the light at all, and it will be it will satisfy their needs for light in that space. The existing structure will remain. The glass also is single glazed and will be replaced by double glazed. It does not have any muntins at the moment. It will not have muntins. And let's see, there you see the side of it and the more or less front. But if you go back to those photographs, Nick, where you could see the 2 views, you can see the
Sorry.
Slippery devil.
I'm so sorry. My mouse is malfunctioning. So there we go. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
So if you look very carefully on the left, you see the arched part, and on the right, you see the flat roof that we're proposing, which is at that horizontal line under the arch.
Right. So even most of the structure is not visible from this spot. Right. It's just the top. So it's going to go from round to flat, and it's actually lower in profile when you're done.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so that's it.
By the way, there's the aforementioned, not that it matters for this application, roof deck at 58, I think that I was referring to, way at the top there, that railing, just to, in case anyone's wondering. Not relevant to this, I'm sorry to distract us. Okay, and it's going from plastic to metal?
Yes, it will be, no, the exterior will be wood, the framing of it will be wood, the roof will be an EPDM membrane roof with a slight slope to drain,
right?
And the glazing will be double glazed glass, so there's no plastic anywhere anymore.
Great. Okay.
And this will allow them to, they've had leaks in both at the floor where the greenhouse is and at the lower floor. And it's just been impossible to get to a spot where they can fully control those leaks. So this will take care of that.
Commissioners, any questions about what is proposed? Okay, so let's go ahead and take public comment. If you want to be heard on the record, please raise your hand in your Zoom. Nick will unmute you.
Okay, first up is Rochelle. Rochelle, go ahead.
Beacon Hill Civic Association, the guidelines do not support alteration or replacement of original or historically significant materials or architectural details without evidence they are beyond repair for guideline A1, and the new work needs to be based on evidence of appropriate detail with regard to size, shape, material, and design per guideline A3. End of comment.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Could I just hop in? This was
Please, yes.
This is not historic. It was built in the 70s.
It's a wonderful book, by the way. The McIntyre book is fantastic. For those of you who may not know it,
Yes.
it's a really wonderful Beacon Hill, A Walking Tour, it's called. I've got it on my bookshelf and I highly recommend it. Not that speaks to the significance of this structure, but it's a great book.
Right.
Right here. I got it on my screen here.
Oh, there it is. Very good.
Yeah.
And that is 36-7 Chestnut Street, I think, which is a beautiful building.
Yep.
Let's see. So any other public comment?
Oh, sorry, Mark, not seeing any.
Okay, we will close public comment. Yeah, I mean, this it strikes me as it's certainly not an original feature of the building. It doesn't appear to have much in the way. It's very interesting that McIntyre is the creator of this, which I didn't know, but I'm not sure that quite, with all due respect to McIntyre, qualifies it as an important work in architectural history in Beacon Hill. And it is hard, it would be very hard to exaggerate how minimally visible this is from a public way. I suspect the people on this Zoom, this may be 90% of the people who have ever seen this thing from this Zoom. So because you wouldn't even know that you could even go back there. And then even then, it's just the corner of it that you see. So it's really hard for me to get too excited about this change. But any other views?
Yes. Oh, I agree with both the architect and Rochelle. It's not historic. And I think there is an issue about it being 70s and 80s or whenever, and whether or not that aesthetic should be pushed forward. So another option would be to, when I first heard the term, it was a greenhouse, I expected something much larger. I didn't realize that it was a glass bay, in fact. So I'm concerned about the scale difference of the new element that you're in relation to the facade around it. So suddenly there's, regardless to whether or not it's seen, from my point of view, much like with all the railing issues, we live in a time in which we're much more concerned about dialogue between new and old. And so I'm wondering if the architect would feel comfortable with bringing the two aspects together, as opposed to sticking with the sort of 80s facade notion.
I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but the size of the new one is specifically so that it doesn't block the window.
Yeah, I just had when someone said greenhouse, I just had a really different sense of scale.
I call it a greenhouse because that's how they use it and how they think about it.
So my question is about our commission, our chair says this is so obscure that we shouldn't have much of a role to play, but I'm concerned that everything, all the other additions to this building have been done with a glass system that is more of a kind, and suddenly this is different. And
I'm not totally sure how different. It's only different in that it doesn't have an arch top.
Nick could, so I will, I drew how, Nick, could we show what?
You know what? I'm sorry to interrupt, Ralph, but just for clarity's sake, Bridget, am I correct that the rear facade that we are seeing above this and to the right of this is in fact not the applicant's house, right? That's 50.
Absolutely not. You can you can look at the plan and you see it's a very unusually shaped building.
Yeah, it's like rhomboid, right? The rear facade is quite narrow.
Very narrow. Yeah.
So we actually can't see the back of the house, Ralph, in that image.
You show, could I see what this elevation of the house looks like?
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, Nick, that was too soon.
Anyhow, sorry.
I thought there was a relationship between your building and the building next to it.
Well,
I thought it was all a part of the same complex. So
no.
I thought, but I still feel as if I see facades of your building, if I see the front facade, I'm going to get a particular language.
Yes.
And this is not what this element is about. But you're apparently within your right to sort of skew that.
No, but I'm confused because we're not changing the language and the vocabulary from the element that we're repairing and shortening. So that's, if you, Nick, could you put up the elevation, the drawn elevation? Yeah, so that's what it looks like now. And what we're doing is essentially chopping off the arch. And you can see that only that narrow section, that's, if you look at the bottom, you can see 58 Pinckney, 56 Pinckney, 54 Pinckney. So it's a tiny, tiny facade.
So the white part, part is just the white part, the with no diagonal lines. That is literally the back of that house, right?
That's right.
So that's it. There is a characteristic to the first floor, which is in one style, the first level of your house, which is in one style.
Yeah.
Your greenhouse, which is in another style, and the style of the building originally.
Correct.
So I would, but apparently you're within your right to not merge them sympathetically to each other.
I think, I mean, in my many years coming before the Architectural Commission, I have always understood that that was not what we should do. We shouldn't create something that looks historic that wasn't there before, but maybe that's shifted.
I've lived on the Hill since 1969.
You're ahead of me.
So I'm aware of the sort of narrative of buildings that are unsympathetic, additions that are unsympathetic, sympathetic across that sort of period of time.
Yeah.
So you're apparently in a position where you do what you've done. And to my mind, it feels as if I'm dealing with 3 different periods. And, but you apparently within your right to
Well,
eschew that sort of concerns for continuity.
Well, the other thing, Ralph, for what it's worth here, I think this is ostensibly, and Bridget, correct me if I've mischaracterized this, but it's ostensibly a repair at the end of the day. It's got a leaky roof because it's kind of a combination of it's old and maybe the materials were not so great, and it's got a leaky roof, and they want to fix that, and they want to fix it permanently or as permanently as possible. So they thought, well, rather than just patch it up, let's replace the roof with something that's going to serve the purpose better going forward. Is that fair, Bridget?
So Bridget, you're going to recycle the glass.
naturally, all materials get recycled. I will mention that to the contractor. But in that spirit, having double glazing here, which would be allowed in any case, and I will say that the owners of this house did a huge piece of work restoring their front bay, which is a 2-story bay and has lots and lots and lots of windows. And they built that with, divided light insulating glass. So these are not people who are casual about these matters.
We are not talking about the owners.
Well, that drawing that flashed up for a minute, I did that drawing. I did 6 others like it, and the owner's decision was to keep it the way it was.
Okay, well,
so I've been practicing that. So let's move on.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
So Nick, could you put up the one that we're proposing also, just so that, yeah.
There we go. And again, we're only seeing the top of this thing from that little corner of that dead end of the dead end of the dead end alley.
Right.
It's off of Pinckney Street. Okay, well, I think notwithstanding the foregoing discussion, in light of the very, very limited, I would say de minimis visibility of this, only visible from the end of this dead end alley, and given our prior record of decision, in particular, of a few cases of late that were visible only or principally from this same general location, number one. Number two, the non-historic, non-architecturally significant feature, a characteristic of this feature. And thirdly, the fact that it will ostensibly retain the bulk of its structure, and the revision, again, while neither historic nor architecturally significant, is certainly modest in character and otherwise appropriate, and appropriate with respect to materials and workmanship in every other respect, that it be approved as submitted.
I second.
Okay, we will vote. Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Given.
Aye.
Commissioner Jackson.
I'm abstaining.
Okay. Fair enough. Commissioner
I won't
Kiefer votes aye. Commissioner, I'm sorry, Ralph?
No, I won't get the last word, but
right.
Pretty
Commissioner Kiefer votes aye. Commissioner Steele.
Aye.
Okay, the application is approved. You get a letter from Nick as usual. Any questions, please follow up with him directly. Thank you, Bridget, for coming in.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, commissioners, especially Commissioner Jackson.
Spirited discussion.
I love it.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I think Barbara has now joined us, so we can go back to 141 Revere.
Yes. All right.
Barbara, thank you for your patience, and thanks for your persistence in getting to the meeting.
Yeah, and thanks to Sarah for giving her a buzz.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Very, very nice. Very good.
Barbara, are you there? You're unmuted, Barbara.
Oh no, have we lost her again? Barbara, can you hear us?
I think we lost her. Oh, there she is.
See her.
Yeah.
Wonder if her
Barbara?
micro-
Barbara, or can you hear us? You're up.
But she's muted.
She's not muted. It might be her
Oh,
microphone. Yeah.
Oh.
Barbara, can you make sure you are unmuted on your end if you can hear us? Turn your microphone up. Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, let's see. We do have the administrative. We could come back to this if we need to. If we need to get Barbara further sorted. I'd hate to have to continue this if we don't need to.
Sorry, is Barbara on camera? Can we see her?
No.
Okay. All right.
Oh,
How
wait.
about now? How about now?
No.
Still no.
Um, Sarah, what do you think?
I can send her another email. I mean, she's on the call and we spoke, so she should be able to present. Oh, I see.
Oh, you see something.
Oh, we're making progress. Barbara, we can see you now, I think. Oh, I think there she is. Barbara, can you hear us? Maybe we spoke too soon. Sarah, do you have a number for her where you could call her?
Yeah, I can call her one more time.
Okay, tell you what, let's go to administrative. That'll give us a couple minutes anyway.
Okay.
And maybe Sarah, thank you. If you can try to get that sorted.
Quick question. Isn't Barbara able to actually call in? Well, that's just it.
Yeah, there's a phone number. Sarah has it. She has the posting. She can give them the phone number.
Okay.
And then when we see it dial in, we can unmute her.
Okay, we'll come back because we've got the at least administrative ones to work to approve. Any questions, comments, abstentions, recusals, concerns about any of the items listed under administrative approvals or review, pardon me.
And don't forget public comment on this one, Mark.
Yes, I actually remembered this time, but only because you reminded me. So I'm sorry to deny Arian the opportunity to remind me as she so nicely does. But okay, nothing from commissioners. Okay, so we will go ahead and take public comment. If you want to be heard, please raise your hand in the Zoom.
Okay, I know the Civic Association has a comment about 127 Mount Vernon Street, and I did ask John, the restorer, to show up to answer any questions just in case.
Okay, very good.
So Rochelle, go ahead.
Beacon Hill Civic Association, we believe the applications for 20 Lewisburg Square, 25.0840, 6 Mount Vernon Square, 25.0784, and 127 Mount Vernon Street, 25.0789, represent modifications visible from a public way and or replacement of historic materials not evidenced as beyond repair and could be appropriately considered under the design review process. I'm to comment.
So Mark, why don't I comment on that? And Rochelle, you can give me a thumbs up if this is what you mean. So 20 Lewisburg Square, I know the Civic Association had a comment about the window below the front stoop. Is that correct, Rochelle? Just thumbs up if that's, well, I'll just, go ahead. Do you want it?
It's all 3 things.
It's all three things. Yeah. Okay. So the window that's being replaced is from the 1940s. It is a true divided light that they're proposing to replace the window. It's a 6-light window, all wood, and I thought it was appropriate to remove the or to replace them in kind. The emergency equipment, I worked with the applicant to come up with the best possible location that will be approvable by the fire department, that would not obscure the architectural details as proposed. And what else? The intercom system was already approved by the commission under a violation review. And the security grates are routine security grates that we approved being installed through the mortar joints on the window. So with that being said, so we'll continue on to Mount Vernon's Square. The fence at the rear of the property, sorry.
I think we might have a Barbara, but we'll go, Barbara, if that's you, we'll get to you in just a moment. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
No worries.
Mount Vernon Square, Nick.
Yeah, sorry, my program just crashed. Yeah, so I'm using my phone right now. So sorry, I'll get to that in just a second here. Yeah, sorry. Oh, so 6 Mount Vernon Square, we approved a fence at 10 Mount Vernon Square, and I had asked the applicant to modify the application to mimic what was approved at 10 Mount Vernon Square, meaning that it would be a simple cedar fence that doesn't have the pointed pickets at the top, and it will be the same finish, which I believe is an unfinished fence. It's cedar, so that's why since that was already approved, I moved that to administrative review. And then last but not least, 127 Mount Vernon Street. I moved, that was an in-kind replacement with a door that dated to the 1940. The door itself, I think, is a little bit newer. It might be from the 60s or 70s, but the frame is being replaced in kind. And John Brown, who's on the call right now, he's a door restorer. So I did ask him to come this evening in case if we wanted to weigh in and get his thoughts on that. So that was my reasoning for placing these under administrative review. We do have the ability to pull any 3 of these applications if you feel that that's what should happen. And we can do that and then ask the applicant to appear before the commission. But I do have John here tonight if we have questions for him about the door at 127 Mount Vernon Street, because the property is anxious to get that door repaired and in good condition as soon as possible. And as we know, that is a community group that currently operates in that property. So I'll stop there and let me know if you have any questions. And while that's happening, I'm trying to relaunch my Zoom on my computer.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Nick. And let me just say, Rochelle, thank you for bringing this to our attention. As you, of course, appreciate, and the commission appreciates, there's a tension here in terms of what do we bring before the full commission versus do administratively. And I think one of our general goals is to try to make this process as not only effective as possible, but as efficient as possible, because it's in everyone's best interests to not have to sit through a 5-hour hearing or something like that. And so we have made an effort over the last couple of years where we thought it was reasonable and appropriate to move certain items to administrative that were otherwise uncontroversial and that reflect, among other things, for example, clear examples of de facto standards that we don't think require a lot of deliberation. An intercom system that exactly matches the specifications of other ones we've approved, installed in a like manner, and so forth. I will say for Nick, in Nick's to his credit / defense, he makes a reasoned judgment about all of these things. I know he's very thoughtful about things, about this question of what can we do to reduce the burden on the commission and the general public in the hearing, but far from trying to want to make, in effect, all these decisions himself. For as many as we have tonight, questions about things that are on administrative and questions as to whether they should have been in design review. There are at least an equal number, if not more, where Nick, out of abundance of caution, has put them on design review when they probably could have been administrative. But he thought, let's just make sure this issue has the benefit of the full commission just in case there's some desire to adjudicate some aspect of it that he hadn't considered or hadn't thought was necessarily worthy of our consideration. So I'm not at all concerned that Nick is being too cavalier or whatever the word would be in placing things under administrative review. I'm satisfied with his explanation, at least personally, as to his logic for placing these under administrative review. I'm not inclined to delay these applications further by a month, which is what would be required if we were to move them to design review. But commissioners, I invite your thoughts.
I think we should move forward as we normally do.
Can you
I
say?
agree.
Yeah, let's just move forward.
Okay, so you're not concerned about these being administrative. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
No, I don't.
Okay. Does anyone think we need to hear any of the ones that have been mentioned in with the full commission next month? Okay, I am not seeing any. Does anyone else want to be heard, public comment about this in light of the foregoing? Okay, does anyone need to recuse themselves for any of these? Okay, in that case, I will move that the administrative review items be approved as submitted en masse.
Aye. Aye.
Is that a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll vote Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbon,
Aye.
Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
Commissioner Kiefer votes aye, Commissioner Steele.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. The administrative review items are approved, but Rochelle, for what it's worth, please, whenever you have such concerns, keep bringing them to us. And by all means, if you have concerns the other way and you think the commission could be more efficient by moving some other things to administrative, feel free to weigh in on that too. Your views and comments are always welcome. Okay, I think we have Barbara back, I hope.
Yeah, and I think Nick also got kicked
Yeah.
off the Zoom. Oh, Nick is here. Okay. So
I'm here,
sure.
but I'm on my phone. My computer at work crashed, so I apologize. Sarah, do you have the presentation up?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you for your patience and thanks, Sarah, for sorting all that. So we're now going to hear back a design review to hear 141 Revere Street. And we're just going to get that up here. Bear with us a second, Barbara. We're just going to get, okay, we've got your presentation. Thank you, Sarah. Barbara, you want to just give us a quick summary of what you want to do?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much. I'm embarrassed, but I'm having computer issues, as you can tell, and I am also on my phone. What I would like to do here is add an exterior light fixture. It's very, very dark. And I propose either one. I'd be happy with either option that I have proposed, just to give some light to the exterior of the property.
Okay, so we're looking at a photograph of the proposed light fixture, which is this brass fixture with the single, looks like light in it, candelabra bulb, antique brass finish. It's 14 inches high by about 5 wide. And 6 inches deep. And if we can go back one, Sarah, just to orient us, you're proposing just one of these, and it would be located as we're now looking at the front door of your house. To orient us, this is the corner of Mugar Way and or Storrow Drive and Revere Street, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so just to the left of the leftmost image is the end of Mugar Way, Storrow Drive, etc. And I believe that's the rear garden of the river house to the right. So the door is the door you see under the
Yes.
black oriel. And then in the closer up version on the right-hand side of this image, Barbara, we're looking at the photo of your front door. So the light fixture would go on the wall to the right of the door. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay, and it's just one. And so it would be mounted to the brick, basically, correct?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us, since I don't think we've got a marked up image here, Sarah, do we have a diagram that shows where this would go? Yeah, oh, thank you, very good. Okay, so that's the location. Obviously it wouldn't look like that, but that's the approximate location of the light
Yeah.
fixture.
Correct.
Okay, commissioners, any questions to clarify? Let me actually just before, let me ask the clarifying question. I saw in the presentation, Barbara, two different versions of a light fixture. Okay, we're looking at one now that's more of this, what do you call that? Looks a bit more like the street lamps.
The candelabra.
And then there's
Yes.
one that's sort of
Either way.
rectangular. Okay, so you'd like to do
Yes.
one or the other of these, and again, in either case, it would just be one to the right of the door. Okay.
Exactly.
This is a little shorter, probably a little deeper. Yeah, a little wider. Similar in scale. Okay, commissioners, any question as to what Barbara is proposing here? Just for the moment, for clarity's sake. Okay, hearing none, let's take public comment. If you want to be heard on the record, please raise your hand in the Zoom and Nick will call on you.
I think you got it. It looks like we have Rochelle.
Yes.
Let's see. This is fun on my phone. Go ahead, Rochelle.
It's working. Okay, so Beacon Hill Civic Association. We do not oppose this application as submitted and view either light fixture proposed as appropriate and in satisfaction of guideline E6. We request installation be into the mortar and not the brick. End of comment.
Okay, thanks, Rochelle. Anyone else?
Not seeing another public comment, Mark.
Okay, very good. So we'll close public comment. Okay, commissioners, thoughts. Are you okay with the light fixture? And understanding, of course, there's no recess of this entry, there's no vestibule, so there's no opportunity to put a pendant fixture and so forth. But are you okay with the fixture is the first question. Secondly, do you have a preference as to which version of it? If you
Yes.
Oh.
Ralph, go ahead, please. Commissioner Jackson.
This is a beautifully composed facade, incredibly symmetrical. It's exquisite. And I think there should be two light fixtures, one on either side. And they should stack above. If you go to an elevation of the facade, I would take my cue from, I don't know what these things are.
Yeah, but down below.
Down below, but I would say balance up around the frieze of the door, two fixtures. I tend to prefer the oblong fixture rather than the carriage or the squatter one. This is everything about this facade is so sort of dripping with architecture.
Yeah.
And so the verticality of everything suggests to me that the light fixture, which is more vertical, would be more appropriate. And again, I think balance is has a significant role to play in honor of the formality of the facade.
I agree. And even without the formality of the facade, just as a layman looking, it would look weird just to have, or look odd, just to have that one light. It would be one thing if it was at the center of the door, but there's nothing to attach it. So it would make sense to have two, not one. And I also with the elongated light.
You like the taller one as well?
Yeah.
It does make sense when you look at the windows, not just looking at what's beneath, but just look side to side, it would just
Yeah.
be more harmonious.
Okay.
I would like to say something, if that's
yes,
okay.
Barbara, go ahead.
The only reason, I agree, I think symmetry is the best. But when I brought the electrician over, he said because of the restraint inside where the electricity is, then he would have to run out exterior conduit. And that's why I proposed one. On the left side, if you look at the door,
Get a second
I know.
opinion.
And I don't think
Yeah.
anybody wants exterior conduit.
Right.
No, we probably don't. Agreed. You might, I think I'm with Ralph. I think you might want to get another opinion about that. It seems
Get a new
unlikely.
electrician.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to say it that way,
Yeah.
but yes.
I have a quick question for Barbara. The electrician that you have,
Yeah.
is he used to working on
Mhm.
historical buildings? Is he?
Yes, he's around a lot.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
he's
this
been here and he did a lot of.
let me clarify. Is it his expertise?
Yeah.
I'm
Well, I can't really answer that. I mean, he certainly does a lot of work around the hill.
Okay, so
I
yeah,
suspect.
I think that maybe you do want an electrician who
Yeah.
is well versed.
This is an
Yeah.
expensive building,
Yes.
and I think you
Yeah.
should be paying what it takes to keep the formal legacy of the building alive, rather than
Okay.
what's most okay. From my point of
Yeah,
view.
I'm willing to do it. I want to do it. I'd love to have two. I think that makes total sense. Exactly as you say, one to the left, one to the right. And as I said, the only problem is, and I can certainly search for another electrician.
That sounds like it
or
might be
something like that.
That sounds like that might be the better way to go because
And maybe
this
there's
is
sounds
also,
odd that he's not able to make that work.
This isn't a townhouse in
I'm sorry.
Charlestown.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it, and I'm very comfortable doing it, and I particularly love the long and lean look. Option number one.
okay. Oh, option one, that's helpful. Okay, so it sounds like we have a consensus. And, you know, Barbara, for what it's worth, and we very much appreciate the not wanting to have an ugly conduit out there. We're all about trying to remove that where it exists and avoid it when new installations are required. You know, for what it's worth, maybe there's a slightly unsightly version on the inside, right? That gets around maybe some of the stuff he's concerned about in terms of getting power to this thing. But if it's okay with you, I'd like to proceed on that basis, assuming you'll work that out, how to get power to this thing without doing it on the outside. That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I'd love to. I'd love to do this. Yeah.
Great. Appreciate that. Commissioners, any other thoughts? Any contrary views on that? Okay. And Ralph, while we're at it, not that we should be designing these things for the applicants, but I agree, I think, with all the aforementioned points. I think there's just a tremendously strong symmetry of this facade. And I didn't actually say it, but I'm glad you did, Ralph, that when I first looked at this, I kind of thought, oh, geez, maybe there should be two of them. But since we're going to the trouble, can we put back the picture, the image of the facade? So Ralph, I want to just clarify your suggestion with respect to their placement. Are we saying in the same vertical a line as the two small windows?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So I just
Yes.
want to get some language for the for the motion. Okay, if we don't have any further comments or objections, I'll move that the application be approved as submitted with the following provisos. Number one, that option one, what's indicated in the application as option one, the tall rectangular version, not the carriage version, be used, and that secondly, that two fixtures, not one, be installed, and that thirdly, they be installed in the same vertical line as each of the respective small windows immediately to the right of the above and in the same vertical line as the two small windows flanking the doorway.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, great. We will vote. Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Mr. Given,
Aye.
Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer votes aye, Commissioner Steele.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much for your persistence, Barbara. Glad we got to fit that in. You'll get a letter from Nick summarizing what we've just said, and if you have any questions, please feel free to follow up with Nick directly. Thanks.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate your patience with me struggling to get on this meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
no worries. We have our own challenges with the technology for sure, so we can relate. Thank you.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Barbara.
Good night.
Bye.
Okay.
All right.
Stretch here.
Okay. Almost done. Sarah, you want to just go to the next slide? Thank you. I just wanted to let everybody know that oh, let me just
Uh-oh.
Now you are muted, Nick. You weren't.
This is
there you go.
terrible. Okay, yeah. Sorry, my computer is faltering. So next month, for June, we will not be having our hearing on the third Thursday because the third Thursday is a holiday, Juneteenth. So it will be held on June 26th. So make sure you're marking your calendars to reflect that day, and we will just just to remind you and let you know that that will be happening. So that's that. And then just to let you know in terms of what's happening with the department, we have two new landmarks that are on their way to becoming landmarks, one being the Old Corner Bookstore downtown, as well as the Old North Church complex. So it's not only the church, but it's also the chapel next door, the parish house, and the small gift shop in the back, which is historically known as, I can't remember the name. My team will kill me, but they're on their way to being a landmark. We're just waiting for the mayor's signature as well as city council approval.
Love
And
house.
then, thank you. Yes, Sarah. Thank you. Yes. I knew Sarah would know that. And then last but not least, May is Preservation Month, as many of you may or may not know. And you can visit our website at boston.gov/landmarks if you are looking for some free or low cost events that celebrate historic preservation here in the city of Boston. And thanks to Sarah for helping us put together that website and some of the team members. So that is it for staff updates. Which means last but not least, we just have our final piece of business this evening, which is, I don't think there's a slide for it, Sarah, but it's the annual vote for chair and vice chair. Just a refresher as to how this works. It's majority vote for the folks that are here. We have a representative from each of the nominating bodies. And I just sent everybody an email. This goes by secret ballot. If you remember by last year, Mark has renominated himself as chair and Arian has renominated herself as vice chair. I did not receive any other nominations for the two positions. At this point, is there anybody else that would like to nominate themselves or someone else to either of those roles? Going once, going twice. Okay. So basically, just open up your email, and if you could just respond to that email with your votes for the chair and vice chair, and I will tally the votes, and we will have our chair and vice chair for 2025, 2026 on time this year. So yeah.
First.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
All right.
I guess I missed something.
Oh, Ralph, I just sent you an email. We're voting for chair and vice chair. You just have to respond with your vote. Sorry, did you?
I'm of a certain age. Jesus. Well, I'm voting yes to the current leadership.
Okay.
Do I need to say that in the email?
Well, it was secret ballot, but thankfully you're supporting the
Oh,
two candidates
no.
that are up. So
I'm having an evening.
that's okay. It's okay. No embarrassment because there's no one else nominating themselves. So okay.
Oh, that was funny.
Yeah.
But
I voted yes.
we
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Ralph.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
They're young and bright.
All right. And Annette, I sent it to your which email did I send it to? I sent it to your realtor@gmail.com email. We lose her. No, we do. There we go. Great, got it. Thank you. Cool. So I'm happy to announce that Mark has been reappointed as the chair and Arian has been reappointed as the vice chair. So thank you very much, and we appreciate your leadership or continued leadership.
Thank you all. Thank you for your continued confidence in our leadership, and thank you and congratulations to Commissioner Allen. Thank you for your willingness to continue to serve. Thank you all for your service. Look forward to another year.
As always, I second.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys.
Oh, is that it,
Terrific.
Nick? We're
That's
way
it.
ahead of schedule. We're 3 hours ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I hear
I don't
a
know.
motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Aye.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi, happy
Opposed?
month.
All right.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
See you next
See you
month.
later. Thanks,
Good night.
everyone.
See you
Have a
later.
good
Thank you.
night.
Night.
See ya.
I know.
Yeah. How do I get out of here?